Are we up? Well, I'm having a cup of coffee along with my sad glasses, because sad is what they are, the seasonally affected disorder. And if you hang on for another hour, Paul Swingle's going to be along, and we're going to be talking about emotional problems with children. Never had any of those, have we?
Never.
Operational behavior. I don't really know what that. Oppositional behavior. My eyesight's not very good. Conduct disorders, adoption issues, and depression, as we're going to be talking about with Paul Swingle in another hour. And I guess I could take these off now. And these are really, they're for brain brightening, they're for sad, and they've got 3 different situations, and you put them on, and you can walk around. Those of us that are affected with seasonal affective disorder, you can walk around with them for half an hour in the morning and get a lot out of them, as opposed to having, for instance, one of these sad lights, which I'll get open in a second. And this kind of a sad light is also cool, but you have to sit there with it on your face for, you sit there and stick it on, and it's got to be on your face. So it doesn't work for what I'm trying to do. And I think the battery ran out on that minute. I haven't charged it for a couple of months. So we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff, including opposition and adoption and oppositional disorder. God, we have a lot of people in opposition, don't we? Securities Commission, bankers, clients, whatever. Dan Walkow is my guest, and Dan is the president, founding officer, etc., of www.cbankcapital.com. You can take a look at it. And the reason that I like Dan here, above all else, is because he specializes in U.S., Canadian, cross-border investments. Well, that's all he does. That's not all he does. If you live in Vancouver or White Rock or Surrey or West Vancouver or some such thing, North Vancouver, you can certainly go and deal with them. And he's more than qualified to deal with a Canadian. My part about that is that there's 5,000 people you can deal with that deal with Canadians, and I can count on one hand. That's it, one hand right now. And I've been in this business for 45 years. I can count on one hand the number of people that I know that deal on a professional level, and that's what they want to deal with, U.S. Canadian investment issues and RSPs and IRAs and Keogh plans. And I found it necessary to ask you a question about IRAs.
You did?
Yesterday, and you very kindly phoned back, and the question I had to ask you, and I'm going to ask you again to put it on here, because the person who asked me might be watching. I suggested that he could watch and could phone. And that's, when's the last day you can buy an IRA?
The last day you can buy an IRA is up to April 15th.
Okay, for last year.
For last year. So you can make a contribution. You can set up a brand new IRA. You can make a contribution for the 2008 tax year. And the trust we work with, as I mentioned to you this morning, David, or last night, was that we can open up an application literally on the 15th, as long as we have it postdated.
Everything is postmarked.
As long as it's postmarked to our trustee, they'll accept it and process it.
So if somebody were to go and see you in White Rock, who happened to be... Right. See, that's funny. I had one lady today who's a mining engineer, and she made, $138,000 last year, American, as a mining engineer. And I could have her go and buy an IRA right up until April 15th, and she can get the deduction for this year.
Yeah, I should mention, actually, we handle it expeditiously. There's no requirement to actually come to our office.
I can just pick up a phone.
So if you're anywhere, literally in North America, if in Alaska or Texas, or you're in California, or you're an American in Canada, you can phone us. We'll email you the documentation. You can sign it, courier it back to us, and we can literally have it done in 24 hours.
Okay.
So
if you're down in Texas or you're in Florida and something or other, and you're a Canadian, there's no reason that an American living in America never intends to come to Canada would want to deal with you particularly. Is there, or is there?
Well, we do have some clients that are Americans, and this is primarily by way of referral, because we don't directly market in the United States for American clientele. But as we do get referrals, and we've had a building clientele over the last year. We've done a good job for somebody in Wisconsin or somebody in California, and they've seen fit to refer to us, and we're now getting domestic American clients which are not cross-border.
Well, I thought that it was cool. So you're happy to look after somebody who's just across. I mean, you're a boutique.
Right.
Your boutique. I mean, what,
Right.
6 people or something? And if you phone Dan, you get to talk to Dan most of the time.
Yeah, you don't have to go through a bevy of salesmen. You can talk to us directly.
And you don't have to worry about Dan leaving next week because he's the president of the company,
Right.
the chief executive officer, and the guy that founded the company. And I will tell you that we talked about Wisconsin, and we're talking about a particular client of Dan's. And this man who's extremely, well, he's a good guy because he's got a 38 Chevy and a 46 Chevy, and you can't be a collector of old cars. He rides on a Yamaha motorcycle, and he drives a motorhome. So any guy like that's got to be a good guy, right?
He's a good guy.
He's a good guy. Anyway, Farrell's his first name. I don't bother with his last name, but Farrell wrote me a letter so complimentary about you that I was wondering how much you paid him.
No, nothing.
You know how sometimes you refer people to somebody?
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. You never hear back.
Yeah.
That's the end of it. And it was so nice to know that I referred Farrell to you, and you looked after him and saved him a whole crop of money because what did you do? You delayed his RIF for a year or something?
We just figured out a way to make sure that he could get reduced withholding taxes when he started his RIF by making sure the timing is right in the conversion from an RRSP to a RIF.
Well, let's get that straight, because what happened is, and I'm going to try and précis this, and if I'm wrong, we'll forget about it. If you're an American, you happen to work in Canada, you bought an RRSP, and now it's time to convert it to a RIF, and that's a smart thing to do. If you are a Canadian who moved to the States and you had an RRSP, and now it's time to convert to a RIF, if you take the money out that first year, you can end up with 25% withholding.
Right.
If you wait until the next year when it comes out in a monthly payment, it's 15%. So you save 10%.
Right. So as you know, when you take out an initial shots out of an RSP distributions, it's taxable at 25% or withheld at 25%. If you take it out, if it's converted to a RIF, and there's a minimum of 2 payments a year, so it has to be a periodic pension-like payment to qualify for a 15% withholding rate.
And that's Article 18 of the U.S. Canada Tax Treaty. In Farrell's thing, he said because his income he's retired, and his income is not in that high tax bracket, so if he paid 25%, it would have been 10% more.
Yeah, he gets it back in the following year in his taxes. It's a cash flow issue to some extent.
Well, no, but the only way you can get it back is with a foreign tax credit. And if your tax isn't that high, you don't get the foreign tax credit. So Farrell was really complimentary.
Yeah, it worked out well.
You'd saved him 10%, and 10% was a lot of money.
So as I said, we're able to, and we are now starting to gather some U.S. clientele directly in the United States. And it's interesting for a variety of reasons. One, we're finding, for example, that it's the type of things you deal with. For example, many Americans are used to dealing with mutual funds, and we spoke about this last week and a couple of weeks ago about Americans primarily use mutual funds in their IRAs as the investment vehicles, as opposed to, unless you're a very large account, individual securities. And we've had occasion now where we deal in individual securities as well as mutual funds, but where we'll be able to buy individual American bonds. And so whereas you'll have a client who has a bond fund, which is, suffered along with the rest of the market over the year because of the toxic paper and all this stuff that's embedded in these mutual funds, which isn't overly transparent to the client, right? They didn't know that was in the fund. What we do is we do a lot of work in where we buy individual bonds. Say, for example, a person has an IRA and they're going to retire and they need an IRA distribution set up per year. We buy individual American bonds, corporate bonds, not junk bonds, but good quality bonds issued by good corporations, and we will build ladders, 5, 6, 7, 10-year ladders to promote cash flow, to get cash flow to fund the
so
IRA
what you're
distribution.
doing is you're having a different bond expire or mature every year.
Right.
So that's the money you're going to take out.
So this is one of the reasons we're finding we're getting more American clients, because, interestingly enough, I was asked by one of our American custodians to advise an investment dealer in Ohio on their bond component to become a sub-advisor to actually manage their bond component, because they didn't have a lot of experience in dealing in individual bonds.